one of the difficult things for people to come to understand is the idea that no spanking doesn't mean no discipline. I mean, if it meant no discipline, that would be a disaster. Kids need guidance, control, rules, follow-up. That's really essential. So the question is, how do you provide discipline without hitting? Well, the first thing is just to promise yourself you're never, ever going to hit your child. I mean, just like in academic departments, people take an implicit promise that they're never, ever going to hit a student, never, ever going to hit a colleague, no matter how awful that colleague is. I had one colleague who wouldn't even get in an elevator with me for 9 years until he retired. But I never worried about him hitting me because the rules are you don't hit. So parents have to do the same thing. Just take a pledge that I am never, ever going to hit the child. Well, then what do you do? In fact, parents already do lots of other things. They should just do those other things more consistently. For example, they lay out rules, but frequently not clearly and consistently enough. They need to follow through. When the child doesn't do something or does do something, they shouldn't just say don't do that and then ignore it and let the child go on, which many, many parents do. They need to make sure that there's follow-up, and if the child persists, they need to do something about that. But then kids can be infuriating. I mean, there is no doubt. Kids are a great source of satisfaction and love, but they're also a great source of frustration. And when that happens, as it inevitably will, that's where timeout can be an advantage to parents as well as children. This is one of the benefits of timeout as a disciplinary strategy. It's not only that the child takes a timeout and breaks the pattern, but the parent takes time out, and the coercive cycle that feeds back coercion to coercion can be interrupted, and you can then get on to a better footing after you have taken that few minutes. And it doesn't take very many minutes. It's just to break that coercive and angry cycle that escalates out of hand and leads to hitting, and sometimes seriously hitting, children. One of the big myths about corporal punishment is the idea that if parents never spank, you're going to have a spoiled child, a child running wild, maybe a violent and delinquent child. Now that myth has, like most other myths and stereotypes, has a kernel of truth. There are some kids whose parents don't spank who are like that. Those are the kids of parents who not only don't spank, but in effect neglect the child, that don't pay attention to the child's misbehavior, that let the child get away with murder. As a parent, you can't do that. But they are the exception. They're exceptions that stand out, though. You don't forget those situations, and they're exceptions that reinforce the cultural myths about spanking. What the research shows is that for every child like that, there's many more who are very well behaved, and in fact, on average, study after study shows that the children of parents who don't spank are on the average better behaved, less problem, less likely to be delinquent, cause less hassle for their parents. That doesn't mean they don't cause any hassle. Kids are kids. I mean, if you bring up a child without spanking and you set the example of reasoning and thinking about things, that child's going to give it back to you. They're going to want to reason and explain and defend their point of view, and that's going to get to be a trial. It'll drive you batty for a while. But those are exactly the kind of characteristics that you want your child to grow up to have. And so it's worth putting up with that aspect to produce the kind of thinking, reasoning person that we all want our children to be.